Hi, I'm Arcade Navarro, and I'm here with Maya Jagodic and Marco Salvetti to discuss the role of genetics in the context of the Epstein-Barr virus and multiple sclerosis.
Hi, I'm Marco Salvetti, very happy to be part of this conversation.
Hello, I'm Maya, and I'm very happy to be here too.
So Maya, Marco, why is genetics so important for multiple sclerosis, and why the Epstein-Barr virus genetics?
Well, genetics is important because it tells you something about the causes of the diseases. And in this context, viral genetics is important too, to try to get final answers to questions that have been there for decades.
And there is also an interesting thing. It has been shown that if we focus on molecules that have genetic association to a disease, there is a much higher chance, even threefold higher chance of bringing it to the clinic. And this is probably because genetics, as you mentioned, are giving us causal mechanisms of a disease. So focusing on those mechanisms has a higher success rate, which is important.
It is fundamental, yeah.
Yeah, we know how much time it takes and money to bring something to the clinic.
But on top of genetics of the host, we are here discussing the genetics of the Epstein-Barr virus, the EBV. And I wonder, why would that be relevant in the case of multiple sclerosis?
Well, I think it's relevant because one problem we have in understanding the role of EBV in multiple sclerosis is why a virus that infects 95% of the adult population, so billions of people, causes a disease in just, I think, 2.5 million of people overall in the world. So one possible solution would be that there are some genetic subtypes of the virus that are more prone to induce the disease in some genetically predisposed people.
I see. Well, this is interesting because when one looks at all these large-scale consortia that have focused on what you were describing before, Maya, trying to detect these genetic variants that would indicate causality, they have been extremely successful for some traits, just as, for instance, human height or body mass index, but they have not been so successful for multiple sclerosis. Do you think this may be related with the virus, with the role of the virus?
I would argue against. I think that genetic studies have been very successful in MS, because also...
Well, I was referring to just the technicality of not all the heritability having been captured.
Yes. But of course, the genetic susceptibility is pointing towards dysregulation of the immune system. So we know that it is something that is happening with the immune system. But I fully agree that we haven't captured everything. And part of that could be in variability of the virus itself. It could be that one version of the virus can infect or cause this very bad reaction and the other one cannot. And we haven't studied that so far.
That's right. And in a sense, the virus could somehow mask the heritability estimates, because the virus also runs in families.
Yes.
No,
yes.
That's quite an interesting point, I think. So you were mentioning something interesting, Marco, before. You were mentioning a role of the virus, different variants of the virus, some of them increasing the risk. Is there any chance that some of the variants of the virus may be protective?
Yes, of course.
Wow.
I think that this is an important point. The other important point is that through understanding the viral genetics, EBV has kind of 80 genes, okay? And with just such a small number of genes, it's able to control thousands of genes in our genome. So if we understand which EBV genes are involved in the control of our genome, then we somehow understand also the biology of the disease. And this would be, of course, something very important, perhaps to match also with immunological data and understand which of the many immunological data we are collecting all over the world are really meaningful for understanding disease, the causes of the disease.
That's really a very exciting frontier, in the sense that, as far as I know, no one has tried this before with MS at such a large scale. It's quite amazing. And also you're pointing at, of course, of a few genes of the EBV that interact with other genes in our genomes. Does this point to interactions between the host and the viral genome in a way that goes beyond what has been achieved so far in MSGUS? Do you think that this is a promising avenue of research, Maya?
I think it's a very exciting avenue and something that is quite plausible. I mean, we have a virus that has evolved with the human population and it has really adapted so well to survive and to avoid our immune mechanism and defenses. So it's quite likely that there will be a combination of the genetic predisposition of a person as well as potentially also viral genetics, and that in this combination they are acting in ways that we maybe haven't predicted so far.
You mentioned the word there, evolution. It's quite surprising because some people may not be aware of something that is very fundamental in this project, which is the virus has been evolving not only with the human population, but with our ancestors, with the rest of primates. And indeed, the effect of the virus in our cells is so drastic that it is the Epstein-Barr virus that is used for cellular immortalization in the labs, right? This hints at potentially very strong results if you analyze together the virus and the host genome, right? But also, there may be relevance of this virus to other diseases that are not multiple sclerosis, right, Marco?
Yes, it is. My personal opinion is that EBV is very relevant for multiple sclerosis and perhaps for lupus, maybe less relevant for other autoimmune conditions, but this is just my personal opinion, you know.
Well, science starts with personal opinions that you go and test in the lab, which is just brilliant.
Absolutely.
Excellent.
And we're also thinking about the sort of fundamental approach to study the role of a viral infection in a very complex chronic immune-mediated disease. So I think from methodological, analytical perspective, what we learn in this context will likely be transferable to other diseases.
And if I can just add, while I said it's maybe less relevant for other autoimmune conditions, we should always remember that it is relevant for neoplastic conditions.
Yes.
Absolutely. We were almost forgetting about that. But Maya keeps coming back to translation. And this is fundamental, right? If we learned that a virus can affect so many different conditions in a way that has not been proven enormously before, right? We have the COVID example, but the Epstein-Barr virus can affect our immune system, but apparently also can impact many different diseases that they were classified differently even, right? Yeah. Oncological treatments, autoimmune treatments, and so on and so forth. Do you think that this knowledge, on top of helping us understand MS, will signal avenues for us to shape prevention and perhaps even treatment of MS?
I mean, possibly. And especially the whole approach that EBV MS is taking is not to study anything in isolation, but to rather try to integrate studies of the human genetics, host genetics, together with the viral genetics in the context of link with immune phenotypes, with the clinical phenotypes in clinical trials using very advanced artificial intelligence methods. So it does have a possibility to translate this into many other fields in a new way of approaching complex pathologies that we're facing.
Well, if it's a virus, one can imagine something very simple, right? Just use an antiviral, and then you perhaps can reduce the incidence of MS worldwide by changing the treatment strategies, right? The project is a bit about this, right, Marco?
Yes, that's the other part of the project, which is trying to identify antivirals that work. This, on the one hand, provides a cure for multiple sclerosis. And on the other hand, it also tells us that really EBV is the cause of multiple sclerosis, or at least one necessary condition for the development of multiple sclerosis.
That's a very interesting point. And just in the same way that you mentioned before, that may be variants of the virus that increase risk while others may well be protective. there may be different variants of the virus that have different sensitivities to different treatments, right?
Yes.
So this is something that needs to be explored, the interaction between genetics of the host, genetics of virus, and potential treatments of MS.
Yes.
Well,
And I think that's also one exciting part about the project, not only trying to understand the mechanisms and test novel therapeutic approaches, but also try to see whether we can identify people and viruses that would respond in a certain way and that need to be treated with particular drugs.
that's really fundamental. You should personalize the treatment not only to the host, but also to the particular variants of the virus that are infecting this host. Wow.
And not only for treatments, but also for vaccines.
Of course, not only a treatment, but a preventive action and a preventive intervention that may have to do with the virus rather than to do with the host directly. That's very interesting. Well, unless you want to add something else, we already told the audience a lot. Is there anything that we are forgetting that may be relevant?
Maybe we could add something about the possibility of identifying some biomarkers
That's right. Yeah.
too, because what MS has been suffering from is the lack of biomarkers that can tell us that a given treatment is working. This is a problem for multiple sclerosis, and it's a problem also for many other neurodegenerative conditions. And if through this research we can identify one biomarker that tells us that treatment is working, we really shorten the duration of clinical trials, and we can provide answers very, very quickly.
That's
Yeah.
an aspect of MS that is certainly lacking, and that many other pathologies do have biomarkers about how the treatment is progressing. Well, anyway, those are very optimistic times, and we have lots to offer. So thanks for joining us, and stay tuned to be able to get more news in MedTalk about the EBV MS team. Thanks very much.